Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to yet another edition of the Quality Dialogues. India is entering its Amrit Kal, so the pressure on us, ladies and gentlemen, is to run faster than we've ever run as a country. And that brings with us a lot of challenges. As we need stable governance, we also need robust policy, but most importantly, we need a certain level of swachhata or quality in our implementation. So some of these roles that have been played by the Quality Council of India that completes about 25 years working in the shadows. But we are now going to speak with someone who's not only spearheaded Bharat's Swachh Bharat campaign and taken India to becoming an ODF free nation, achieving some of the key goals as far as the SDG goals are concerned, but he's also now the CEO of NITI Aayog. Parameswaran Iyer ji, namaskaram.
Namaste.
And I thank you for making the time. It's a very, very tight schedule. But this is a conversation that we need to have. And so let's start with the ambit of swachhata itself in the broad aspect of it. That means you need to have spot on policy governance and policy initiatives at all levels, swachhata. So let's start from there and where the QCI plays a key role 25 years down the line.
Sure, Anand. Glad to be with you. And as you mentioned, when Prime Minister Modi took the nation and the world by storm, 15th August 2014, when he made that huge announcement from the Red Fort that India was going to become Swachh by the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. I was then in Vietnam, in Hanoi. I was working in the World Bank. And I was amazed, like the world was, that a Prime Minister was talking about the hitherto taboo subject of sanitation from the Red Fort and that huge commitment he made. So I was very lucky, 14 or 15 months later to be recruited as Secretary in the Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation and to come back to India and to play an important role in implementing the Prime Minister's vision for a Swachh Bharat. Now again, that vision which the Prime Minister threw out, he took that taboo subject of sanitation by the scruff of its neck and said, we're going to make it happen. So that commitment was huge. That political leadership was massive. And then, of course, that needed to be translated into reality. So it became very, very important to take stock first of where we were in terms of the baseline, right? And again, as you spoke about quality, the Prime Minister never compromises on that. It was a huge target. We had to bring 550 million people in rural India out of that habit of open defecation. And then we needed to provide 100 million toilets to enable them to use. But all this, the quality of the program was very important. And in fact, I still remember engaging with the Quality Council of India and getting them to do a survey to find out what's happening on the ground, what's the reality of the situation. It became very important. So they came back with a very robust report, which enabled us to kickstart the program and to make sure that we knew what to deal with on the ground. So those ground level realities came out in that. So that was an important moment because we were always reminded by the Prime Minister that this is not about quantity, it's about quality. The focus of the program is about changing behavior.
Great.
It's not so much about infrastructure. So how do you get people to change their mindset of changing that centuries-old habit of defecating in the open, even sometimes when they actually had a toilet. So the shift in behavior was very, very, that was the qualitative aspect of the program, and that was always our focus.
But how were you able to maintain standards? That means you need constant monitoring. And even now, in your current role as CEO NITI Aayog, you play a dual role. When I say NITI Aayog, on the one hand, you need growth. It has to be fast. Policy initiatives have to be taken. On the other hand, you are working in the spirit of cooperative federalism. All of it. One of the aspects is it's okay to make an announcement. The implementation is the tougher part. And at every step, there has to be scrutiny, monitoring, check. So how did you go about this?
So I think one important lesson I learned from my previous assignment was the importance of independent evaluation of programs. Here in NITI, we have an office called the Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office, DMEO. It's a critical part, it's an attached office of NITI. It has about 100 staff.
Okay.
They're all specialists in monitoring and evaluation. So NITI plays a very, very important role in monitoring and evaluation of the different programs of the Government of India. We have a framework called OOMF, Output Outcome Monitoring Framework. Every ministry has to come up with output and outcome indicators for their respective programs. They have to report to NITI, and we have a team here which reviews that, and we have an annual dialogue with the ministry. So that focus on quality, on measurement of output, but more importantly outcomes, is a critical part of NITI's work. And now we are trying to take this down to the state governments, because most of these programs are implemented in the states. So what is the capacity of state governments to monitor and evaluate programs, both central and state? NITI is helping states build that capacity. Again, a very, very important part is that qualitative dimension of all these programs, and NITI is at the heart of monitoring that.
How easy or difficult is it? Because we are not a nation who want to be monitored. We are not a nation who actually deliver on accountability. There is a narrative shift which the Prime Minister is trying to drive, but typically...
No, look, it's always challenging. It's not just in India, but anywhere in the world. I've worked in different countries. But, this is not an exciting part of anyone's job. And particularly if a person or a department or a program is being monitored or evaluated, typically there's a little bit of resistance typically. So again, in India, it's not unknown for people to oppose it. But I think increasingly now, when you explain the importance of both monitoring, which is more concurrent, and evaluation, which is looking more at impact and at post and looking at outcomes, when you explain the importance of this to a state government or to a ministry, they understand this, because actually this is helping them to implement their program better. So I think that's an important part of our job, is not only to build capacity to monitor and evaluate, but also to explain its importance. Because if the program is implemented better and you have better outcomes, then there's a greater chance of getting more resources for it. It's also a way of attracting more financial resources.
Correct.
So it's to everyone's advantage, and you are incentivizing performance if you take evaluation seriously. And I think that's one big effort of this government, is to make sure that programs are well implemented. One of the hallmarks of this government, as you know very well, Anand, is actual delivery. In some ways you could call it the policy of implementation. Of grounding programs at scale. Whether it's toilets, whether it's cooking gas cylinders, houses, roads, financial inclusion, health insurance, all these programs have been delivered at scale. And the Prime Minister is very, very particular about the evaluation of programs. It's got to be of good quality. And I think you can see the results speak for themselves.
Because one is you do the implementation and you monitor it. The other one is sustenance. So how do you continue to do it year on year? So is that a continuous process?
It is a continuous process, and it's a very, very important part of all the work NITI does. In my previous job, again, to come back to sanitation, we realized that the sustaining of a changed behavior sometimes is even more important than the first part. Because it's one thing to campaign, it's another thing in the cold light of day, how do you sustain that behavior? So a couple of years before that deadline or the milestone of 2nd October 2019, we set in motion a program focusing on sustainability. So Swachh Bharat Phase 2, 2.0 as we call it, approved by the cabinet, is focusing not only on broadening the definition of sanitation, looking at solid and liquid waste management, but also on sustaining the outcomes of Phase 1. So how do you maintain the communication? What are the mechanisms to sustain? What are the incentives? All of them were built in. It took a bit of a hit during COVID, but again, COVID itself was an opportunity, for people to understand the importance of hygiene and sanitation. So it came back, and now in NITI, sustainability of programs is extremely important. So the effort is to build in sustainability into the design of the program, rather than look upon it as an add-on later. And in all the programs which NITI helps ideate, design, incubate, hand over to ministries to implement, because we don't implement, right? We support effective implementation. In all that, the sustainability element is critical, and it's programmed and inbuilt into the design.